This is the kind of video I've wanted to make for a while. I don't necessarily see it pulling in too many views or new subscribers, but it's the kind of video that I'd probably watch. You know, the kind on like a boring Sunday afternoon when the dread of another week of work's on the horizon and you're between the 2 o'clock game and the 4 o'clock games of real football on TV. I'd never really had the means to do this before. Football games on the Mega Drive don't really get as much love or reverence as, you know, Sonic or Streets of Rage or even Altered Beast. And I imagine licensing issues are what stops a lot of them getting re-released in a collection nowadays. But a few months ago I bought let's call it a device, that lets me play a good chunk of the Mega Drive's back catalogue without having to mess around with a PC. I also bought a capture card that lets me record straight to SD cards, so again, minimise my PC time as much as I can here. It's hard to imagine nowadays with the football market being so dominated by just 2 games, well, let's be honest, 1 game. But back in the 90s it was just the Wild West. There's so many football games out there, and I was playing my Mega Drive mainly between the ages of 7 and 11, you know, so kind of real formative growing up years. And you know, around this time I was just really getting into football, and I just wanted to play all these games. I mean, honestly, back then, if I was at a games shop and I had to pick between Ultimate Soccer and like Super Metroid or Pro Moves Soccer and Street Fighter 2, trust me, I'd be going for the former. I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but it's the truth. There's definitely part of me that misses those days as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, the majority of the games that you're about to see are pretty much unplayable these days, but at least back then we had options. FIFA and Pro Ev have both seen better days, and the only other options we have are like indie games that are never really going to break through because of licensing and, you know, just the amount of money behind them. If we had a couple more options, like if Sony brought back This Is Football, or if 2K took its shot, you know, at like UEFA 2K21 or whatever, I think that might raise the standard overall. But anyway, I wanted to look back at all the football games that I could find on the Mega Drive. I don't think this is a fully comprehensive list, but there's nearly 20 games here, plenty to talk about, so here we go. Yeah, it's this one. This might be the game that you associate most with Mega Drive football games. So this was released in 1989, and it's kind of funny because in isolation, 3 of my favourite things in the world are probably football, games and the 1980s, but put them all together and you get, well, this. Now, Italia 90 is one of those games that everyone either had or played, but no one really liked it. It was part of those Mega Games compilations as well, and I think it was a pack-in with the Mega Drive for a while, maybe before the Sonic games came out, I'm not sure. Now obviously there's a lot about this game where I look back and laugh, or at least smile. The opening grunt, the music, honestly, where'd they get that music from? Like, but we all love it. The sound effects, the slide tackles, the keepers and penalty shootouts, and to be honest, it's not unplayable either, especially compared to what came before it on stuff like the Commodore or the Amiga. But there's no denying, you know, it's not a good game. Even back then, it was one of those games you'd play where you just didn't know what else to play, or you'd played FIFA and Sensible Soccer to death and you just wanted to kill some time. Now, going into the game, you got a choice between playing a 1-player match, a 2-player match, or a World Cup. There's a decent amount of countries to choose from on this unique world map, let's say, and there's a weird mix of like fake and real players. So here I am, picking my Scotland starting 11, and by the way, that's my starting 11 for the whole tournament, you know, not just one game. But, you know, in goals, Jim Leighton and Alan Rough, right, fair enough. Defence, alright, I recognise Willie Miller and Steve Nicol. Not so much McTavish and Murray. I don't know if I'm just outing myself for my lack of knowledge there, but yeah, I mean, you can also see Scotland's trademark diamond defence on display here as well. And then there's some old kind of ISS, you know, lookalike names. There's Meldini instead of Maldini, but it's a strange mix of real names, similar names, and just completely different names. On the pitch, what can I say? You can either shoot it along the ground, pass it along the ground, or play a long ball. You can't really build up play in any kind of way, and it's just a war of attrition. Slide tackles flying everywhere. I don't think I've ever seen a foul in the game. The slide tackles are still fun though, to be fair. But One problem that came flooding back to me playing it again is the game automatically switches your control to the keeper when he's facing a shot on goal, but you don't get any kind of warning of this, and chances are you're running in the completely wrong direction because you thought you were controlling a defender, leaving the goal somewhat exposed. But I mean, what can I say, it's Italia 90, we love the goal sound and the music, and not a lot else is worth talking about really. Now we jump forward a whole 3 years, pretty much half the Mega Drive's lifespan when you think about it, to the next football game to show up on the system, which was European Club Soccer. Now I've got quite a soft spot for this one. Me and my brother had it back in the day, so I played a decent amount of this before we got our hands on FIFA and Sensible Soccer. And you can see right away, a good bit of progress has been made since Italia 90. You've got the standard horizontal camera angle, honestly not too dissimilar to what's still being used today. And the footballers actually pretty much look like people now. You can pass it about a little more than Italia 92. And this game's all about club teams. And there's a strip editor right there in the main menu. All you can really do is edit the colours. And every strip's in the same style. It was pretty rare to see a stripy shirt on the Mega Drive, but you know, it's a nice option to have. The team selection here is also really good for the time. It's even got my team, Dundee United, and the strip looks pretty good for the time. It's got the right badges as well. But on the pitch, I've got 3 words for you. 3 shredded wheat. Right, so if you enter 3 shredded wheat into the password screen, all your players' shots will be supercharged. So halfway line shots quickly become the norm. And I don't mean, you know, Beckham, Xabi Alonso lobs, I mean like Seedorf shots from the halfway line. So you might not be able to take the tiki-taka approach anymore, but who cares? It also speaks of a more innocent time maybe when elite sporting performance was associated more with shredded wheat and not something else. You can pick your formation for the team, even go for a bold 3-2-5, but you can't pick a lineup. You're just stuck with the same guys no matter what. And it seems like all the players are completely fake too. No mishmash like Italia 90. So here's Derek Campbell lining up for AC Milan, and what a player he is too. So a decent game, not top drawer by any means, but a good improvement from Italia 90. So one of the 2 big hitters of the Mega Drive football market, Sensible Soccer, is still really playable today. It's that old cliche of easy to pick up, hard to master. I've played the Amiga version of Sensible Soccer, which is probably what it's best known for, with that 1-button control. But I actually prefer the Mega Drive version because it had 3-button controls, although you can still use just the 1 button. But yeah, I just prefer the Mega Drive version. My favourite Mega Drive football game at the time was FIFA, but I would say Sensible's probably aged the best. But for the uninitiated, you can see by my footage here just how much faster Sensible Soccer is from what we've seen so far. There's just a lot more finesse in the gameplay too. With just 1 button you can pass, shoot, cross, tackle, header. You can add curl to your shots too, change the trajectory of them depending on if you pull back on the D-pad after shooting or not. You can choose formation and lineups now, and you have star players in your team, as long as you're not playing on beginner, which I was for this footage because I've never actually been that good at this game. This game's got about as many club teams as European Club Soccer did. They're not licensed like that game, but you can change the names whichever way you want. The players are also sound-alikes, so it's really easy to tell who's who. So here you've got Pule McStay and John Cullens for Celtic. The game's got a battery backup too, so these will be saved once you turn the system off too, which is actually pretty rare at the time. There's also plenty of European national teams, but countries like Brazil and Argentina would need to come later in an international edition. There's also a load of like joke teams like In a Pencil Case, Bad Words United and Chelsea, and the players will be named accordingly, you know. So for In a Pencil Case you've got players like Rubber and Protractor, and you can see the manager's called A Schoolboy too. I'm not sure they 100% nailed the bad words though, because I don't know, I've never been called spaghetti or milk, and the coach is carpet sweeper. What's going on? But it's really just kind of silly British humour. It does tickle me quite a bit, I've got to admit. The game also has modes beyond what we've seen so far as well. You can create your own league or cup, or do a Euro Super League or UEFA Cup, I'm guessing is UEFA Cup. There's actually some really good Sensible Soccer documentaries on YouTube. I've linked one below by Kim Justice. You're better off watching that for a comprehensive look at Sensible Soccer really, but honestly, get a 92 player with this game and you'll still have loads of fun. Right now, Tecmo World Cup 92 is the first game of this video so far that I hadn't actually played back in the day when I was a kid. The name serves up a bit of a red flag too, because there wasn't actually a World Cup in 1992, so you might get the feeling that these guys aren't exactly football connoisseurs. But it's a much more basic affair than the last two games. It's a lot like an arcade game really. You can play a 1-player friendly, a 2-player friendly, or a World Cup, that's it. Then in team selection we've got the usual heavy hitters like Algeria, Brazil, Russian, but to be fair to them, right, we only came to know the Russian state of the USSR as Russia on Christmas Day 1991, and this game came out in 1982, so maybe they'd not sorted out the lingo yet. Mind you, USSR, Soviet Union, CIS, Russia, I don't think any of them had their home strip in a light green shirt and navy shorts. But you know what, this game's not too bad. I mean, I couldn't imagine playing it for more than like half an hour, but you can knock it about quite nicely. I said you couldn't play tiki-taka in European club soccer, but that's probably your best tactic here. I mean look, you've even got underlapping fullbacks like Guardiola had with Alaba and Lam at Bayern. Alright, I've gone too far. But yeah, the game's not the car crash that I expected. I also found an unexpected banger in the soundtrack. It's a kind of like prog metal-y thing you'd expect in a Castlevania game. You might say it doesn't quite suit a football game, but I for one hope Konami and EA are taking notes for PES and FIFA 22. Right, well, the next game on my list I had down as Champions World Class Soccer, but when I loaded it up I realised that it was like a regionalised version of the game we had here, Ryan Giggs Soccer. Because I remember renting that game years ago, and two things when playing this jog my memory. This theme song, this weird theme song. It takes like 30 seconds to settle into even like a normal beat. And also the fact that the colours were the wrong way around for the Scotland flag. But first the main menu. Look, the default is 45-minute halves, and that's not 45 minutes of made up game time, that's 45 minutes real time. And the shortest option you had was 15-2, which is at least like twice the length of a normal game at FIFA or PES today. What I also noticed is that the order goes in 45, 15, 30. I don't know, it's weird. But yeah, into the team select, you can see Bizarro Scotland here with their white flag and their orange kit. I did find it quite funny though, because you have Scotland and Wales but no England, you've got Great Britain instead. Anyway, going into the game, after Chris de Burr here gives frankly quite an accurate analysis of Mexican football, we're into action, and that's where the laughs end. I mean, this one's a fucking turkey. the scrolling's really kind of juddery. I couldn't figure out a way to pass accurately at all or tackle with much success. I kept getting hacked from behind with like zero repercussions. I couldn't direct a throw in to save my life, and then I was conceding goals like this. Goal! Bear in mind this is meant to go on for a full 90 minutes. I lasted about 6 until I turned it off. Oh, and sometimes, not all the time, it plays this wee sound when a keeper saves it. Big fan of that. But otherwise, this is definitely the worst in the video so far. Ryan Giggs should hang his head in shame, and his game's not great either. Now we're on to FIFA. Oh, the one that's still going. It's what, maybe the third biggest game in the world, do you think? Behind Fortnite and GTA? It's in that kind of realm anyway. But this is where it all started, FIFA International Soccer on the Mega Drive. I'm just going to talk about the first one, and probably the one I played most, FIFA 96. We'll go on to the first one. The menus you can see are a bit tidier than what we've seen so far. It kind of copies what EA were doing with the Madden and NHL games at the time as well. EA still do that today actually, the FIFA and Madden front end are pretty similar. So you can see pre-game here, we've got Ron Barr giving us synopsis, and you can actually do actual tactics. I'm not convinced they did anything, but they're there nonetheless. Now on the pitch, I'm very rusty, but this one hasn't really aged too well. not compared to Sensible Soccer and EA's best series on the Mega Drive, the NHL games. In this first one, it's really hard to just pass it about. Pressing the B button is meant to pass it, but more often than not, your player will just knock it ahead of him slightly. Now that's pretty good for dribbling, but a lot of this game just feels like you're kind of fighting for control, and the players kind of speed up and slow down all the time as well. But I do like the little things. I like how you can do an instant replay at any time and move the camera all around, and that was pretty much unheard of back then. I like the fans too. Really impressive when you think about the amount of sprites on screen, and when you consider like PlayStation games usually just had a stretched JPEG for the crowd. This looks really cool. But yeah, more fun to watch than play, this one probably. And quickly looking at FIFA 96, what was so appealing about this one at the time was that it was the first one with real players in like whole leagues of teams. So before this, FIFA International Soccer, you only had countries with made up players like Brian Plank for Germany. And then FIFA 95 brought in club teams, but it was still fake players. But now we've got FIFA 96, real players, real teams, full leagues, everything. And the game does feel a bit more refined too. You can pass it about more in this one. It is a bit broken in that there's like 2 sweet spots where you can nearly always score from. Kind of at the throwing line, about 40 yards out. What I liked also about this one is that you can always chip it over defenders and run onto it. So I remember back then doing a Serie A league with Lazio, and Beppe Signori scored about 60 goals in a season by just constantly chipping it over the defender and hammering it in from that sweet spot with his size 4 boots. You can also put sound effects in while you're celebrating too. This one does feel quite on rails though. There's frequently like shots, headers, slide tackles that you have zero input and they just happen. Luckily for me, Cremonese here weren't exactly clinical in front of goal. But nah, something tells me today's FIFA generation with their live pack opening video reactions and diss tracks and sidemen TikTok reactions and pink slip wager reactions, actually they don't do that anymore, do they anyway? But I think they'd have a tough time with this nowadays.
Brought to you by
Pele. If you struggled with old FIFA, you're going to really love Pele. This is another one I owned as a kid. Jeez man, the Mega Drive was really wasted on me. But Pele just screams budget game made in like 2 months. Knowing people would buy it just because it's got Pele's name on it, and it worked for at least one person, me. But the only thing Pele in this game is that you see his autograph scrolling in the background. So let's go into the settings here. I tried pressing every button to see what options I was working with, but all I could seem to do was pause the background. Also, even if these menus did work, how backward is that? Like, I need to change the game mode from friendly to tournament in the options menu, and then go back into the main menu and hit start. Like, instead of there just being a friendly or tournament option in the main menu. Like, I don't know how they were so bad at designing menus back then. Team selection's a bit odd too. The most you'll have for any country is like 3 or 4. Aberdeen are the only Scottish team in it. And there were teams that I'd never heard of. I think they're maybe just city names to be honest. So I went Nkana up against Aberdeen. We've at least got a nice pre-match screen here with a diverse group of ethnicities looking like it's from the 40s or something. But on the pitch, Pele's main problem is that it uses an isometric camera like FIFA, right? But it controls as if it was a top-down vertical game like Italia 90 or Sensible Soccer. So you press up on the D-pad, your player will run towards goal, which in this case would be up to the left. So really you need to tilt your controller at 45 degrees at all times for this to make sense. Maybe if you played nothing but Pele for days you'd get used to it, but I think that'd be a bit of a hard sell these days. And apart from that, yeah, I wasn't able to score because I had bloody hoover hands and goals either. But before we leave the Pele cinematic universe, this game actually had a sequel that I wasn't aware of at the time. Pele's World Tournament Soccer came out a year later. And to be fair, this one's a good bit better. They've sorted out the controls now so you kind of move in the direction that you'd expect to move. The menus are a bit better, and I do mean a bit. You can choose whether or not you want weather, for example. The graphics are a bit nicer too. The pitch looks better to me, and there's a bit more charm to it now. I like how happy the crowd is. There's a guy chugging the beer. There's even Elvis. You'll also have players like hopping around when they're being fouled too. Everyone's a bit more animated. It's international teams this time, in the spirit of the '94 World Cup in the USA, and the big man himself gives you a bit of insight into each team too. You can even play 5-a-side if you want. I actually won a match of this too, putting together a few mazy dribbles in the process. It's not exactly perfect, and I'm not saying it's better, but I actually had more fun playing this than the 2 FIFA games I just talked about. The bad stuff I was just kind of finding funny more than anything else. Like when you've got a free kick, your guy will always run in circles about 5 times before he builds up the courage to take it. The slide tackles more often than not just look like your guy slipped and fell. And still, near enough every shot just gets vacuumed into the keeper's hands as well. But I guess this one was a bit of a pleasant surprise, in the most minor way possible. Well, I decided to split this list into 2 parts, just to keep the videos at around the 20-minute mark. So, part 2 will be coming in a couple of weeks, and that will mainly feature games from 94-95ish era, so hopefully we'll see something exciting. And look forward to that, and thanks for watching.